Welcome to A Pair of Bookends, the book club you can carry anywhere. I'm your host, Hannah MacDonald, and I'll be bookending the conversation with some of the most exciting voices from the bookish world. For today's episode, I am so excited to be joined by Kathleen MacMahon to discuss her new novel, Other People's Lives, which is out now. And if you haven't got yourself a copy, you can buy one via the link in our show notes, or of course, via your favourite bookshop. Kathleen is a Dublin-based writer. She previously worked as a radio and television journalist with Ireland's national broadcaster, RTE. She's the author of 5 novels. Her debut novel, This Is How It Ends, was translated into 20 languages, spent 5 weeks at the top of the bestseller lists in Ireland, and was a Richard and Judy book club pick. In 2021, Kathleen's third novel, Nothing But Blue Sky, was longlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction. Her latest novel, Other People's Lives, is a sharply observed, witty and moving story of marriage, family and friendship, and was described by Louise Kennedy, author of Trespasses, as an elegant and beautifully observed novel by one of our finest contemporary writers. Joining me to chat all about it, welcome Kathleen to A Pair of Bookends.
Thanks for having me, Hannah.
Thank you so much for coming on. Is it true that Irish people find talking about themselves very uncomfortable? I didn't know if that was uncomfortable to hear about all your achievements at all.
Oh no, I'm delighted to hear about them.
Okay, good.
No, I think I've got to the age where I'm just going, that's me.
Sitting in your success.
Yeah, kind of for my 18-year-old self. Let's not.
Good.
We'll take it.
Yeah, as you should.
Take the win. Yeah. Are Irish people uncomfortable talking about themselves? I think Irish people like to go sideways at things, which is, as I'm sure we'll discuss, one of the themes of this novel is how Irish people are not always as direct as we think we are. Or as open as we think we are.
Yes, we will definitely be getting into that. Before we dive into your book, though, I do like to open by asking what you're currently reading. So could you tell us?
Oh, I've been reading the new novel by Willie Vlotton, the American writer who has written, I don't know, maybe half a dozen novels. Generally about people living tough lives in America. I feel like he's a modern day Steinbeck. He's the most beautiful writer. He makes it look quite simple what he's writing. It's easy to read, but heartbreaking stories of people with living kind of hard scrabble lives in America. And this particular one is called The Left and the Lucky. It's set in Portland, Oregon. It's a beautiful story about a house painter called Eddie who has living next door to him a little boy of 8 called Russell, who's got a really tough situation. Mum works at night, his brother's quite cruel to him. And Eddie befriends this little boy. And it's a tough story because these people have tough lives, but it's also, he's so tender and he really makes heroes of people who deserve to be heroes, who do good with their lives in ordinary ways, And I just find him such a touching writer. I love him. He's fascinating. He's also in a band, which is really irritating because I remember seeing him read once and, book events can be a little dull. I can read, you talk. And this guy, Willie Vlotton, he picks up his guitar and he plays in the middle and I was very envious of him when I saw him do that. So I'm kind of racking my brains ever since to think what I could do, but like literally bar stripping, I'm not sure I have any performance talents that could be leveraged to.
I would love to hear that that's what's happened at a book event.
They're hard to liven up,
That's amazing. I mean, I think it's slightly unfair that he's able to do that as well as write these amazing books. Yeah. The audacity.
I know, really. Anyway, I would really recommend that book, The Left and the Lucky. It's
such a good title.
Oh, he's a beautiful writer. The last one I loved was Don't Skip Out on Me, about a little Mexican boxer down in, I don't know, Texas or somewhere. And again, I mean, these are heart-rending books, but if you're up for your heart being torn to shreds, he's
always. That's why I go into books, because I want my heart torn out.
I love that too. Lily King, Heart the Lover.
Don't.
I couldn't see out of my eyes. I cried so much.
Oh my God, I felt so emotional. I was in bed and I was beside myself. I couldn't.
Wasn't it unbelievable? I was hosting
Incredible.
a family lunch the day I finished reading that. Do you know what I did? I dug into the Halloween box and I wore a hat with a veil. My eyes were like completely just shut from crying so much.
Oh my God, it's such an incredible book. There was a really strange coincidence with her book where you know the moment where she talks about being, I'll try and not give too much of a spoiler for listeners if they've not read
Yeah.
it yet, but there's a moment where she stood by somebody's hospital bedside holding their
Yeah.
hand and feels their hand change into her mother's hand, I think. And the weirdest thing is that my nana has told me many times, she loves to repeat this story, that when she was by her mum's bedside holding her mum's hand changed into a bony old man's hand and it was her dad. And she felt her
Stop.
dad's presence. Yeah. And it's the only time I've ever heard somebody else tell a story similar. And I remember reading it in the book and being like, oh my God, that's my nana's story. Like, and
Wow.
sending her a photo and she couldn't believe it.
Wow. But
Yeah.
she's another
Goosebumps.
magnificent writer. And again, I mean, I love writers who make it look simple, who hide the
Yes.
secrets. And I think she's one of those writers who really hides the craft. And there's a lot of it there. But I've loved her. Her short stories are amazing. Five Tuesdays in Winter. The other novels are amazing. There's a novel
Yes.
called Euphoria that have you read that?
I
It's
haven't got to that
stunning.
yet. I've got it on my shelf, but I've not got to it yet. I need
It's an
to.
amazing story. So I'm such a fan of hers
Yeah.
and an admirer of that kind of writing that is so skilled but doesn't show off.
Yes. Yes.
I love that.
There's a moment where I think it's realizing that she loves someone, and the line is literally, "Oh, love," and I was like,
Yeah.
just so
Yeah.
simple but so beautiful.
But don't they say that's exactly right. You hit the nail on the head. Don't they say love writes white or happiness writes white? It's really hard to write about love and
Yeah.
happiness.
Yeah.
So much easier to write about misery, irritation,
Hmm.
anger, you name it. But she really does it. And in those short stories, Five Tuesdays in Winter, she writes about beautiful stories about love and
Hmm.
happiness. And it's so hard to do.
Yes.
Like capturing sunlight or, it's
It's
hard.
it's it's hard because you feel like you're kind of walking a fine line between it being cringy and realistic, and it's it's really hard.
Exactly. Exactly. And not to be sentimental
Yes, yeah.
it's hard. She is a real master at it. And hey, it's nice to read a book that's about love.
Yes, for sure. Let's get into your book because I have so much that I want to talk
Okay.
to you about. Could you set up for the listeners the sort of premise of other people's lives?
Yeah, Other People's Lives is about two women who are nearing 50, who've grown up side by side in Dublin. As little girls, they lived right next door to each other. So they've really lived side by side throughout school, college, and then the choices they made around marriage, and one of them ends up living abroad, the other stays in Dublin, are really only now they're starting to see the consequences of the choices they made. Maybe without even really thinking about them very much. And I was really interested in that whole thing of best friends and how well you know somebody.
Hmm.
And yet there's always areas that you don't quite understand or areas of privacy. I had read Elena Ferrante's Naples novels a few years ago, which, as your listeners will know, are about two girls growing up in Naples. And I remember thinking, I already had this idea for two girls growing up in Dublin. And I remember thinking, gosh, an Irish novel about two girls growing up together would be really different because Italians are really outspoken.
Hmm.
And, they say things just directly to each other.
Yeah.
And Irish people don't really do that. As I mentioned earlier, Irish people come at things sideways and go around obstacles and avoid confrontation and don't ask direct questions. So I thought, okay, that's what's going to happen in this novel because I'm going to try to portray an Irish friendship the way it would be between these two women, where they wouldn't talk about whether their marriages are happy and they wouldn't talk about sex. They talk about all sorts of other things, but they would never really talk about the central issues in their lives directly
Why do you think?
until maybe they do, you know?
Yes, yeah. Why do you think Irish people do come at things sideways? Like, do you think there's a direct thing that causes that? Do you think, yeah, where do you think that comes from?
I think we're really private and I think we're really tricky. I think there's all those contradictions in the Irish personality. I mean, I've met expats who've come to live here who, everybody tells them Ireland's so friendly, people are so friendly. We are really
Yeah.
friendly. But we're very slow to invite people into your house or into your
Mm.
home. So there's that contradiction where we'd be really friendly in the street and we'll say, hey, we must have a drink sometime. And that's kind of Irish code for I like you. I kind of would like to have a drink with you, but let's not arrange anything. And like, don't call in. So I think there are those contradictions. And I don't know why that is. I think we've learned to be evasive, maybe because of our history, and to be smart and to cover up secrets with charm and with chat. So you don't really notice we're not telling you something or we're hiding something. You know, we're like the guy who gets stopped by the guards and you've got bootleg alcohol in the back or something. And you tell a funny story, you know, and the guard waves you on. I think we do that a lot, which is really interesting territory for a novelist because
Yeah.
it's like there's all this chat going on, but wait, there's an elephant in the room
Mm.
and nobody's mentioning him.
Got the gift of the gab.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's used, it's not there for nothing, the gift of the gab. It's
Yeah.
used as a method of evading things
Yeah.
and working around things.
It's a real skill
Yeah,
to hone
yeah,
as
we're
well.
good at it. We're good at it.
And the title is, of course, Other People's Lives. I did want to open by asking, how interested are you in other people's lives? Because for
Oh,
me, I want to know everything. I think my curiosities about other people are endless. Like,
hugely, hugely. I mean, you know, people sometimes ask me, where do you get your ideas from? And I mean, I find it the most extraordinary question because you're surrounded by people
yeah.
and their lives. And for me, the thing, yeah, of course, I'm fascinated in other people's lives. And there's the kind of trope that repeats itself in the novel where the husband and wife, Justine and John, get into bed at night and he's reading the newspapers and he's watching telly and she starts asking him, God, do you think that so and so is happy? Or do you, you know, what do you think is the dynamic in that marriage? And I mean, that's directly from my life where this happens. I get into bed after a party and I say to my husband, God, I thought so and so looked a bit weird. Do you think there's something going on there? And I can see my husband just looking at me going, why would we care? Why would we wonder about this? Do you know? So he actually said to me once, other people's lives, babe, you know? And I thought, wow, imagine thinking that that's not interesting.
Yeah.
You know, other people's lives is literally what I'm interested in. But it can be too much then for women, I think, and you
Yeah.
end up worrying about other people too much and doing things for other people. So that became very much a theme of this novel, this
Mm.
character of Justine, who, poor Justine, does care about other people's lives too much.
And it almost becomes consumed by it.
She's consumed by it. She just
Yeah.
can't establish a distance, you know? So she's worried about everybody and she's kind of run ragged doing things for other people.
And of course, the story is told from Justine's perspective, who I honestly think Justine is God's strongest soldier because how she doesn't blow a top
I know.
at anyone, I've got no idea. I wondered what it was like to write a character that, keeps all that quite contained. I mean, you were saying before about how it is quite an Irish quality, but what is it like to write a character like that?
Well, Justine, I mean, I write my characters. I don't, they don't take over. I know some writers will say, oh, you know, the characters write themselves. They don't. In my case. But Justine, at the beginning, I did not intend for her to be such a central figure in the novel. I intended her just to be this quiet presence observing everybody else.
Mhm.
And it was really my editor who pushed me a little bit to go, well, what about Justine herself? What does she think? And I became really interested in exploring that. And, you know, a lot of the central female figures in novels tend to be a similar kind of character. They tend to be really smart and really feisty and really confrontational. I mean, Lizzie Bennet has an awful lot to answer for, I think. And we all love that character, but like, you know, when you think of Meg in Little Women, and there is a tendency to make the female character in the novel the kind of person who will turn the table over
Mm.
or challenge things. And I became really interested in the fact that Justine is not that kind of person.
Mm.
That she's not confrontational. She really cares about other people more than herself. She puts other people first. She's never going to rip everything up and throw it away. And she's not even that smart. I mean, that's another thing which I find really interesting. Like writers tend to go, oh, let's write about a really smart character. And like I'm a really slow learner about life. I just constantly amaze myself how stupid I am in figuring
Oh, me
things out.
too.
Yeah, so I wanted her to be like that. I wanted her to be 50 going, God, yeah, feminism, I kind of get it now, you know? Whereas again, I think we often meet characters in novels who are very political, very switched
Yes.
on. I just wanted her to be a much slower learner.
Mm.
And I thought she, in terms of people's expectations of women, Justine is following the role that I don't know about you, but here in Ireland, if you went to a convent school like most of us girls did in my generation, this is what you were taught to be. You were taught to be a good girl
Mm.
and to be a good wife and a good mother and a good member of the community, a good Christian woman, I suppose, even
Mm.
though religion is kind of absent in the novel because I think it's absent in a lot of middle class people's lives now. But Justine still has that training kind of
Yeah.
hardwired into her to be a good Christian woman. And she's not going to shake it off, but she is feeling the cost of it, the
Mm.
cost of always doing what she should do. And I think it leaves her in a kind of lonely place almost
Yeah.
because she's always thinking of other people and she sees the deficit that other people are thinking about themselves most of the time. And I think that makes her kind of lonely, you know?
Yeah, I think it is quite a lonely place to be. I mean, this isn't necessarily a moment of loneliness, but there is a moment where she is just sort of bubbling away, and it really made me laugh. So I have to mention it. It's about 40 pages in, and she is wanting to go up to bed, and then she asks her husband, has he taken the bin out? Of course he's not. So she then goes back downstairs. She's taken the bin out, bin juices go all over her, and then there's, toothpaste spit in the sink, there's used floss, there's just stuff dumped everywhere, and it's all these small things that add up that just really boil her blood.
But isn't that it? Exactly. And I mean, I'm really interested in how those small things can interfere with your happiness,
Yeah.
you know? And you know they're small things.
Yeah.
Actually, a friend of mine's husband has started calling himself Justine. Every time he's putting out the bins, he goes, "Oh, I'm Justine putting out the bins."
Oh my God, that's amazing.
This is so funny. Yeah, people are really connecting with Justine because that's what our lives are made up of, a lot
Hmm.
of little things. And it's frustrating. I find it frustrating because it's like, you know, they're small things.
Yeah.
You know that the fact that you're picking up people's socks is not really a big deal. But it's amazing the self-pity you can feel in that
Oh yeah,
moment and
absolutely.
the anger and you know, and you're going, I know I'm not going to be on my deathbed thinking, oh,
About
that
any of
was the
this.
story of my life was picking up people's socks. But it does interfere with your peace of mind and your happiness on a daily basis. So I was really interested in that balance between the big things, love, fulfillment, privilege. These are privileged people.
Mm.
You know they're privileged. And yet how in the moment you can still have those first world problems which really get you down, you know, like being angry that you have to bring the car to the NCT or to I'm just really interested in that contrast because our lives in this part of the world are pretty good, you know?
Hmm.
And yet we still have the capacity to get, women especially, I think,
Yeah.
rage about.
Well, I mean, it is to be fair to Justine, there's a lot of unpaid labor that she's doing, and it's
A
unpaid and it's
lot,
unacknowledged.
a lot.
It
And it's
consumes a
that
lot
thing
of
of
her
the
day.
it's that thing of the dog, you know. There's another
The
scene in the book where they're all out to dinner and she goes, "Did anybody feed the dog?" And they all look at each other and go, no. And she's just like, "Why do I always have to be the person to do this?" And then they all laugh, you
Yeah.
know. I mean, it's enough to make you crazy.
Yeah, but there's no, once she acknowledges that, there's no like, oh, we could go for a drink after this dinner, maybe. There's we have to get back for the dog now. It's
You've got to get back to feed the dog. And it's those tiny things, and it's the kind of Chinese water torture of the repetition of those tiny things that makes you crazy. And, she's in that space where she knows she doesn't want to be this person who's
Hmm.
angry about all these little things where it's the present for his aunt that she has to remember to buy. And I think, you hear women talking about mental load, and it is that stuff of just remembering everything.
Yeah, 100%. There is this amazing moment where she's talking to a man, but I can't remember who it is, and he is saying that he finds that there are so many men out there that are pretty good men, but the women are still complaining about them,
Yeah,
and and
yeah.
she's like, "Well, are you surprised? Their work, all they want to do is be acknowledged." Because he's saying that women are never happy, and she's like, "No,
Yeah.
we just want the simplest thing, which is to be acknowledged."
A friend of mine said that to me at a wedding. Some of the conversations in the book, Kate, when you're writing a book and you're writing around these themes, and then something somebody says just lands beautifully.
Yes.
I was at a wedding and a friend of mine came up to me and he said, "Can I ask you a question?" I said, "Yeah, yeah, shoot." And he said, "Why are the women I know all so bloody unhappy?" And I went, "Oh, are we?" And he was like, yeah, all the guys I know, they just, if they get a game of football in once a week and, maybe a quick ride on a Sunday morning, they're fine. They're delighted with life. And he's got, but the women are all so unhappy. So it was just perfect because I thought, yeah, that's where Justine's at.
Oh,
She's
100%.
she's angry. And I thought, why? And I think it is about attention. It's
Hmm.
about somebody just noticing.
Yeah.
You
Please just
know,
notice.
and nobody notices.
No.
And she fills the food with fridge, and the kids eat all the food, and then they put an empty milk carton back in the fridge, and nobody notices. And I think that's what's making her crazy.
Yeah. Oh, and fair enough.
Yeah,
Fair enough. She is coming up to 50. She's been married for well over 20 years to John. I think it's like 25 years, is
yeah,
it?
25 years, I think.
25 years. And early on in the book, you write, Justine always knew that she loved John more than he loved her.
Yeah,
And I wondered whether that kind of creates this imbalance in their relationship. How does that impact Justine?
that's really interesting. You should ask that because that was one of the starting points for the novel. You end up with a few, I think, really important things on the board. I mood board novels, and there's a few things that are linchpins for the story.
Mm,
And that was something I'd had in mind for a long time because, I kind of use novels to test out my half-baked theories about life. And one of them is that a relationship works better. I mean, marriage in the loosest sense,
yeah.
a relationship between a man and a woman works better if he loves her more. It seems to me it creates a dynamic. And I think there is a character, an older woman in the novel, who says this, that women need to be loved more, that, women
It's
are more
definite.
needy. So I thought I would make sure that this relationship, which was Jean Justine and John, was the other way around.
Hmm.
She adores him. She's always loved him more. And I think it's really important because I think it puts her in a slight position of, in some ways, weakness with him, in that she is the adoring one in the relationship and he is the adored. So it kind of makes her, again, a little bit lonely. And yet at the same time, she knows she's married the man she loves. She has the man she loves. So she never has to wonder about whether she would want something else. She knows she doesn't. So in a way, Claire Kilroy, when she reviewed the book, said that it's about the golden cage of love,
Mm,
which is a gorgeous way of describing it.
yeah.
I think Justine really has that. She lives inside a golden cage of love. She has married the man she loves, but because she is the adoring rather than the adored, it just makes her slightly, again, an attention flow that is towards him rather than towards her.
Mm,
The sun isn't shining on her,
yeah.
which it would be if he loved her more.
Yeah, I just got into my head the moment where she turns over in bed to give him a hug, and his first act of the day is one long slow fart.
I know. And
That is a long-term relationship. Like that
I
is just,
know. I
but
know.
it's so good.
I know. And the funny thing about writing is I'm quite a ladylike person in real life. I wouldn't say something like that, but I'll write it because I am trying to portray life as it is.
Yeah.
And I think, isn't that the thing about these relationships, long-term relationships, that the love coexists between them?
Mm.
Because there can be moments where they can annoy you just by breathing,
Oh, yeah.
you know? And then an hour later, there's a moment where you're just laughing at their joke and you think they're the funniest person who ever lived. I mean, Justine thinks John is really funny,
Yeah.
or just this love. You'll see, the back of their head with hair sticking up or something and think, I adore this person. And that all exists together, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So my daughters, I've twin daughters. In the novel, they're twin sons, but I've cleverly disguised them by my girls are 24, and one of them read the draft of the novel about this, like the second last draft. And I was a bit nervous about her reading it because there is a lot of stuff in the novel about kind of the irritations of living with adult children and husbands. And,
Mm.
and I didn't want her to think I was a horrible person and I hated my family. But she was really funny. She read it and then she said, yeah, I think it's really good, Mum. And then she said, can I make a suggestion? And I said, yeah. And she said, I think you should just go over it one more time and just put in a tiny bit more love. And it was really good advice because, again, back to Lily King and that thing of how love is invisible, it is there and you do have to put it in.
Yeah.
So I did go back over it. and have a really thought about how there would be moments when Justine would really feel her love and maybe try to learn to feel her love. John, and almost focus on it in a mindful way, And because she's a counselor and does couples counseling, there's the thing she asks her couples. She asks them, what do you love about him? And, often people come to her for counseling and they'll end up just like spewing their rage, their frustrations. So she'll wait until that's all out. And I think I describe it like bleeding a radiator or something. And then when the moment is right, she'll say, well, what do you love about him? And we don't focus on that much. I think, as in the later stages of a relationship.
Yeah.
And it can be really good to do that. So I really loved doing that with this novel and, thinking about he's kind. She'll think he's a kind man, which is a wonderful thing to be married to somebody for 25 years and think he's kind.
Yeah.
And how important that is compared to maybe the qualities that attract you to somebody as a teenager, where they're exciting or they're smart or they're handsome. So yeah, I was interested in that, in allowing space to notice the love.
I was really glad actually that you explored so many different marriages and the sort of how they all differ, because I think it is important for us to remember that sometimes, although I don't know if it's necessarily healthy that if you compare your own relationship to somebody else's, everyone's of course different, but she looks at John's parents' marriage, and it is that balance again where it's more in favor of his mother Lolly. Pa is the one that's doing all the running around for Lolly, and
Lolly is horrible to him.
yeah,
I mean, she's
it's
kind of made a slave of him. Yeah.
but she loves that. She's an absolute diva. And then we've got Mona, who is Justine's mum, and she lost her husband Bill, and she's quite content now on her own. She's had this marriage, and she's like, no, I'm good on my own now. And then we also have Justine's best friend. Is it Isolde? Is that how you pronounce her name?
Isolde or
Isolde,
Isolde.
yeah.
Isolde, yeah.
And her marriage to Simon is completely different. And then, of course, as you've said, Justine is a counsellor, so she's looking at all these other women in these different marriages through her job role. So how fun was it maybe not fun, how interesting was it to explore the different forms marriage can take?
Yeah, well, again, I mean, I was trying to unpick something that I don't understand. And that, I mean, isn't it amazing that this unit, which is still so central to society, there is no formula for it. We've never
No.
worked out how it works. And, I'm the age now where my girls are in their 20s. And in the novel, Justine's daughter is getting married. And so she's looking at that and thinking, how do we know this is going to work? I mean, how do we know he's a good guy, A? And B, how do we know the relationship works? And we just don't have an answer for what makes it work between two people. And I found that fascinating. So as you say, there's her parents-in-law have this kind of marriage that seems quite hideous from the outside, and the mother is a diva and she has enslaved this sweet man she's married to. But then, Justine catches glimpses of things between them and thinks, although in some way it kind of works. Maybe he's happy to be a slave. Maybe maybe his life is more interesting for being with this monster of a woman.
Yeah.
Who he kind of loves. And, as the novel goes on, I think that the marriage that's really mysterious to her is her best friend's marriage, because she knows it's not good, but she doesn't know in what ways it's not good. And Justine's own problems are all problems in a good marriage. And I found that interesting, that even in a good marriage where there's love, there'll be these daily irritations. But she knows that her friend Isolde is not in a good marriage, but she doesn't know why. And part of the novel is really her trying to figure out why and what accommodations Isolde has made. And I think Justine is so vanilla that she's never thought about doing things in a different way. She's always just thought, I'm going to do exactly what I'm supposed to do. Never really occurred to her that there's all kinds of ways of living your life and that people find ways of being happy. And yeah, to me, I suppose that was something really interesting to explore, was that this textbook novel marriage that we're presented with, which is maybe, Wuthering Heights, I am Heathcliff, he is me, we're two halves of a whole, we understand everything about each other, or the more rom-com thing, whatever marriages we're presented with as kind of the gold standard, that most people's relationships don't conform to that. And there are all kinds of dysfunctional ways to an outsider of living together, which might work or work in a way. And so I was really interested in doing that and having a look at that, because I think a lot of people, again, back to happiness and unhappiness, can make themselves unhappy by striving towards something that isn't really real, you know? What is a good marriage? If it works for everybody in the marriage, if it works for the two people, then it's good. You know, who cares
Yeah.
what anyone else thinks? So it's back to those, I suppose, expectations people have of how you should be doing it.
I mean, I'm
And
so
just
glad that
feeling very
you
locked into that, you know?
Yeah, I'm so glad that you explored that because I've always been so curious about other people's relationships, and it's not even like, I was gonna say I don't want the gossip, but I probably do. Like, I'm
Yeah.
just so curious because I'm like, how does that work? How do they talk to each other? What is their kind of love language? Like, what is the way that they interact with each other? How do they interact with each other's families? It all fascinates me, and I've no idea why, but I think
And it's
it's
mysterious because it's behind
yeah,
closed doors largely, you know?
yeah,
You
yeah.
don't know what makes a relationship between people work. You know, I mean, there's a few examples in the book where you think people have a hideous relationship and then you see them just laughing outside the pub at each other's
Hmm.
jokes, or you hear of friends who, come back from a party and spend 3 hours talking about or dancing in the kitchen, or,
Hmm.
what are the moments that work between people? Maybe he listens, or maybe, and that's really fascinating to me. What are the
Yeah.
things that make a relationship work that an outsider might not see or appreciate?
Absolutely. I really want to come to another sort of core relationship in the book, which is Justine's friendship with Iseult. They were friends from being children. They were next door neighbours, and at school together. You write their names were a sum of two parts, and their lives are sort of inextricably linked, even though they do go off in completely different directions as they get older. I'd love for you to tell us how their relationship became such a core part of this book.
Well, I have a best friend from when I was 4. She was 3.5 when I was 4, and we sat next to each other in school. And we've been best friends ever since. And there's something really visceral about knowing somebody from childhood.
Mm.
And I mean, I remember we were in and out of each other's houses, we slept in each other's parents' beds back in the day where if you had a nightmare, you'd get into the parents' bed. I mean, can you imagine doing that now? But we went on holidays with each other. I mean, I remember her house so well. I could reconstruct it from memory in a way that I don't think I'd be able to reconstruct my own house. There's something about being a child in somebody else's home.
Mm.
You're like a spy, you see everything and you hear everything. And so I feel I understand her family
Mm.
probably better than any family I know, and the dynamics, because I'm an outsider. Now, they're not the family in this novel, but I wanted to explore that dynamic where
Mm.
Justine just really knows these people,
Yeah.
and knows the relationships between them. And then, those pivotal points where they travel together when they're in college, but their lives start to diverge because they study different things. And then I suppose I was interested in how little logic there is to the decisions people make and the way their lives pan out.
Mm.
There's a scene in the novel where Justine goes back to the school reunion and she really observes that when you're in school with 100 girls, as she would have been, you think you know how people's lives will turn out. If
Yeah.
someone's been very smart in school and everybody thinks, oh, she's going to, end up working for the UN, or she's going to end up, having this amazing career. And she doesn't, in ways that are kind of mysterious. And Justine, who wasn't particularly smart at school, ends up having quite a fascinating career and a really good work-life balance. Almost accidentally, she just goes back to college when her kids are reared, and she studies psychology, and she ends up counseling, and she works a couple of days a week. So I was really interested in, just the story of people's lives as time passes and the decisions you make play out, decisions you make sometimes for quite random reasons. And I
Mm.
was really curious in figuring out why Iseult has ended up with this man, why she's ended up living abroad. Things don't happen for no reason, but they're not logical, really.
Mm.
Or they're not what you would expect to happen.
I mean, she's quite content. I want to say by herself, but she's not entirely by herself. But there's a running commentary throughout the book that she's always happy with a book. She's
Yeah.
happy to be left alone, just reading. And they ask like, what does she do all day in this
Kind of
house abroad?
mystifying to her family because she's so
Yeah.
smart and she had such potential. And I think, again, back to Justine being kind of a slow learner, it has never occurred to her that you could really not care what people think.
Mm.
And so Isolde for me was really interesting to take a character who defies that expectation of being a good girl. She's moved abroad. She doesn't really care that she's not there to look after her parents as they get older. She goes, well, don't like my mother very much, so why would I do that? She's even quite dispassionate about her son, which is
Mm,
such a taboo, really, you know? I mean, she says at one point in the book she likes him, but she loves him, but she doesn't really like him very much. And that's
mm.
such a shocking thing for a mother to say about her.
Yeah.
So I was just really interested in how hard Justine would find to understand that this best friend, this girl she's known from childhood, is so different to her
Mm.
and has made choices and lives her life around a completely different set of rules and parameters, which has kind of set her free in a way that Justine isn't free.
Yes, she's not, is she? I mean, I really loved, like you said there, about how different Isil is as a parent in comparison to Justine. And Justine, even takes Isil's son under her wing and takes on that mothering figure to him. And you do this throughout the novel, this really interesting exploration of the different generations at play and how they affect each other and how, at times they might be completely baffled by the next generation or completely amused by them. We see it show up time and time again in the things that the younger generation says, and the older generation are like, what on earth are they talking about? Why did you want to was it a conscious thing to zone in on the sort of generational differences?
Yeah, I mean, in a way, I was just kind of having fun with that because lots of my friends have kids in their 20s and my
Mm.
kids' 20s, and their friends are coming in and out of the house all the time. I'm kind of fascinated by the boys in particular. So I put the daughter living in London because I thought I don't want to get too deep into relationships with the daughter. And I wanted her not to be very close to the daughter. I suppose I wanted to explore that thing. There's no guarantee you're going to be close to your children, that your relationships with them are in some ways like your relationships with other adults in your life once they're adults. It's not automatic. In some way, Justine loves Iselson more than her own children, I think.
Mm.
He's a very caring person. You know, he's full of this innate goodness, a bit like her. And she and he are, I feel, kind of kindred spirits in a way. They understand each other in a way that she's not kindred spirits with her own children.
Hmm.
And she has these twin boys, and I had a bit of fun with them because I thought I want them to be a completely different generation. Because I've observed that in the young people in my life. I mean, some of it's so weird. Like they go around wearing these noise cancelling headphones. You don't even know what music they listen to, you know? I mean, I grew up when the phone was on the wall in the hall and everybody heard each other's conversations. So these kids' lives are kind of mysterious to us because they're on their phone, they're on their headphones. And I kind of carried it to an extreme with her boys where they're really blithe, they're not worried about their future. They think, oh, don't worry, there's going to be a universal living wage, we're not going to have to earn a living. I mean, I don't know whether any of that's true, but like these guys are just not worried about the future, which is terrifying to their parents. So that was kind of interesting to me at where we are now with like AI and
Hmm.
nobody can afford to buy a house, that these kids would just be not worried about it and going, it's going to be fine. We're just going to live on Deliveroo and sell pictures of our toes on the internet. And, I don't understand that world. So I thought, let's put them in a world that their parents do not understand.
I thought the twins were amazing. I thought they were so funny. You
Good
know,
fun.
there's this whole scene where they're sort of rinsing their mum for her music taste, and she's talking about, oh no, well I like this artist and this artist, and then John pulls her up and is like, no, those are your sister's records that you've got. That's not your taste. And
Her
then they'll
taste in music is really uncool. Like she's so vanilla, you know?
Yeah, they,
Uh,
they say they say to her, don't they? They say that did you not listen to any like black music? And then she was like, oh well, isn't that not like she's really getting het up, and she's like, is that not appropriation? And they're like, no, like that's a celebration of culture. Like,
this
um,
is it. She's just at sea in all of
yeah,
this, you know?
she's
And
fighting for her life.
like, what am I doing wrong here? And then she says, we listen to Michael Jackson, and the kids go, yeah, he like tried to make himself white. So she's just like, I can't get my head around all this, you know? He likes George Michael, and they all,
Yeah.
you know?
It was really funny because a lot of her taste was my mum's taste. So
Yeah.
I was like, oh God, this is the kind of stuff where now I can't bear to listen to Duran Duran because it's all my mum played when I was younger. And now
Oh,
I'm like, please God, no.
Justine loves Duran Duran. Of course she does. And John is much cooler. He's like, he's into cooler music, and her sister was into Tom Waits and David Bowie and all, So yeah, that's all kind of fun when you're building a character to
Yeah.
that stuff, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I do really want to ask, I know we're kind of coming up to time now, but I do think it's important that I ask about her sister and
Yeah.
the sort of grief that runs throughout this novel with the loss of not one but two of Justine's family members.
Yeah.
And I was particularly moved by the sort of ordinariness of grief.
Yeah.
There's a moment where she talks about the gas man just turning up the day after the funeral and how you just sort of have to crack on with the daily tasks
Yeah.
and how like baffling that is when your whole world has just kind of imploded. And coming back to the music, there's a lot of music that reminds her of her sister, and you sort of keep Paula's memory alive. Throughout the novel, we hear a lot about her, even though she's not present. Could you tell us a bit about, writing about grief and the way that you wanted to portray it?
Yeah, I think that in this novel, one of the things I was really determined to do was avoid structural devices
Hmm.
that shaped the novel around any particular thing.
Yeah.
Be it a wedding, for example. So traditionally now the structure would be, if there's a wedding at the end of the novel, you open with a snippet of the wedding at the beginning so that we have a circular thing. And I was really determined not to do that. And in a similar way, Justine has lost her sister to an accident when she was a teenager, which of course is a really central thing in her life. But a lot of the time then, if you're shaping a novel, the temptation would be to build around that and to
Yeah.
make it very much the central point. And I thought, but life doesn't really work like that. Of course, it would be a huge thing in her life. It will always be a huge thing in her life, but it runs through her life. And everything doesn't center back on that and circle back on it. So that would be a narrative device to make the novel put shape on life.
Hmm.
And I thought that's not how it has worked for Justine. Her sister dies. It's incredibly traumatic. But as you say, the bins need to go out on Monday morning. And her grief is just a thread running through her life forever after
Yeah.
that. And it's alongside her life. It's through her life. She forgets about it sometimes for a few hours or a day. The anniversary every year is the thing. She thinks about her. I think it informs the decisions she makes in her life. So at one point, there's the thing because her sister has lost her life. She'll think, I'm going to buy myself an ice cream on a sunny day. I'm going to buy myself a new lipstick. She's more conscious of how lucky she is to be alive
Mm.
than she would be if she hadn't lost her sister. But everything doesn't center around it. She
Mm.
still lives her life. And as you say, she almost kind of manages her grief. She has special songs she listens to make her cry for Paula when she wants to cry. So she'll sit in the car and have a good cry. But then she'll get out of the car and go to the supermarket.
Hmm.
And I wanted to make that just a very realistic thread running through her life rather than manipulate it into any kind of plot that was artificially structured.
Mm. It's just the grief is sort of simmering in the background, it's always there somehow, but it's not like the big thing in the room necessarily.
It's never going to be resolved. When her
Yeah.
sister gets married, of course, it occurs to her, gosh, Paula never had a wedding day.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way life is. There's that moment of sadness where you go, God, that's very sad. But it doesn't ruin the day. You get
No.
on with the day, the moment passes,
Yeah.
that's how
Yeah.
it is for Justine.
The moment that you referenced with the crying in the car is one of my favorite lines, so I will just read that to the listeners if you
Oh,
don't mind. Um,
please, please.
so you write, if her sorrow had a voice, it was Mary Black's singing Once in a Very Blue Moon. She would sometimes play that song when she was alone in her car and sing along to it in her tuneless voice and cry and cry and cry. And I do think that is such a beautiful portrayal of that
Oh,
grief, and I felt very seen in that moment because I remember my when my granddad died, we'd all come to the hospital in different cars because it happened, like partway through the day. We'd all gone and sat with his body and said our goodbyes and everything. And I find it really hard to I don't know why, but I find it really hard to properly cry in front of people. And as soon as I
yeah.
got back in my car on my own, I don't know why I chose this song, but I put Bridge Over Troubled Water on
Ah, perfect.
and sobbed.
There you go. And that's the thing, is it doesn't even have I thought, first of all, I thought it would be, Paula's favorite song. But
Yeah.
no, of course it wouldn't be, because that's
No.
Paula's favorite
Yeah.
song. It would be a song that Justine loves. And actually, Paula would be horrified by this song. She would be like, that is that's not Paula's music. But that's right. It's a funny thing. It's just whatever your crying song.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm,
it's just plucked out. I mean, it's got no relation to my granddad whatsoever, but I just
exactly.
was like, this will make me cry, and it did. It did the trick. So,
And it feels so good to do that. And
yeah,
and then actually you can kind of put that on anytime you need to cry for
yeah,
him.
yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think I've made it quite apparent that I could talk to you about this book all day.
Oh, that's
I
lovely.
really loved this book, and I feel like we got to know these characters so intimately, and I think it's such a skill to be able to make these characters feel like completely real people. Like I left this book and I was like, you can't tell me that Justine is not a real person. She felt so real to me. And I also just want to say that I loved her mother, Mona, who is such an icon that she declines everyone's invitations and at one point says, I can't think of anything I'd like less when she's invited to something.
My mother-in-law does that. Mother-in-law
Stop.
does
It's
that.
so good. It's amazing.
I text her to say we're going to cook roast chicken tomorrow night and all the kids are going to be here. Would you come over? And she says, honestly, I can't think of anything I'd like less.
To be able to say that is just magic.
It's brilliant. No, we're all going to aspire to be Mona in later life.
Absolutely.
Mona is who you want to be.
Oh, 100%, 100%.
Oh, well, that's a lovely compliment. And it was such a great chat about the book. I really enjoyed it.
Thank
And
you so
thanks so
much.
much for your close reading of it and your understanding of it.
Oh
That's
no,
been
thank you. Thank you so much for this wonderful chat. I do like to finish by asking for a recommendation. Is there anything you've been reading, watching, or listening to recently that you would like to recommend to the listeners?
Yes. Last night, or maybe the night before, my husband and I went to see the new movie from the Irish director John Carney, who made Once and Sing Street. And the new movie is called Power Ballad.
Oh,
Okay.
I've not heard of this. Oh no, I
Yeah.
have. I have. Is it
Yeah.
got
It's
put
got, well, like I'm old, so I don't know who any of these people are. Is he called Paul Rudd or
Paul Rudd?
something?
Yes, Paul Rudd.
Yeah. And somebody from the Jonas Brothers.
Yes.
Okay. And, back to what I'm saying, I love in books, I love in films as well. I love something that's deceptively simple. I mean, I think John's made 4 or 5 films now, and you can absolutely see the skill underpinning what he does now. So this is a really sweet story. It's a great premise. Paul Rudd is like, has been musician playing in a wedding band in Dublin, but he's happily married with a lovely daughter. But it didn't happen for him. So he's just playing weddings. And he's playing a wedding, and this guy who used to be in a boy band is a guest at the wedding. And they stay up all night jamming. And he plays one of his songs for the boy band guy, and the boy band guy steals it. And it becomes a smash.
Oh my God, that sounds so
It's a
good.
really good plot, and it's really well done. And everybody in it is brilliant, and it's funny, and it's touching, and it's entertaining, and it's cleverly scripted. And we loved it. My husband and I both loved it.
That
And
sounds
it
so much
all
fun.
works around this song, the power ballad that's been stolen. And John is a good enough musician, and the people he works with are good enough musicians that the song is strong enough to hold the movie. Like it has to be a good song
Yeah.
to be convincing that, oh my God, it's this amazing song. And it is. You know the way in A Star is Born with Lady Gaga, that amazing song, The Shallows, and it's just like,
Yes.
oh, it's amazing. This is pretty good. Like it's a really good song, but it's a sweet story and a funny story. I would really recommend it. Power Ballad.
I will have to watch that. You just reminded me as well of A Star is Born. That film emotionally destroyed me. So,
Our whole family, my husband, me, and the 2 girls. Like it's not often that a film ticks everybody's box. I thought my husband was going to not like it. We all came out just bawling. What a great
oh,
film.
such a good film. So good.
She's amazing.
Oh my God, she's
I love
incredible.
her so
Yeah,
much.
yeah. I really, it sounds so mean, but I don't mean it in a mean way, but I wasn't expecting her to be as good as she is. I think it's difficult to have so many big, so many different talents, to be an amazing singer and to also be a phenomenal actor. Not everyone can do all
No,
of
she's
those things,
divine.
but she's
She's
phenomenal.
divine.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she's wonderful.
she's amazing. Love her.
And speaking of recommendations, I will give the listeners a recommendation, which is your book, Other People's Lives. So please, listeners, go and grab yourselves a copy if you haven't already. And I will also be popping a link in the show notes to Kathleen's other books if you would like to dive into those as well. Kathleen, is there anywhere the listeners can follow you online?
I run really inexpertly an Instagram account. And no, I used to have this website, which I went to loads of trouble to develop. And it was hijacked by pirates. I swear to God.
No.
I can't believe it. And now they put just like this bondage front page on it. And it's so bad. And I had to pay money to get it back, to get the domain name back. So I'm not paying them. So I have to redesign my website, which is a hole in the head. But at the moment, it's a bondage site. Maybe it'll sell more books. But so now I'm just on Instagram, and my daughter helps me with it. So yes, I am on Instagram. Kathleen
Perfect.
MacMahon, author.
I said your name wrong at the start. That's shocking from
No,
me.
you didn't. What do you say, MacMahon? That's perfectly fine too. Both are
Okay.
correct.
Okay, thank God. I thought I'd said it completely wrong then. But I will pop a link to your Instagram in the show notes and, of course, to your book. Listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. And if you want to get more content from us, you can do so over on Patreon. And you can follow us at Proud Bookends Pod on Instagram and at Proud Bookends on Twitter and TikTok. That is all we've got time for. So thank you so much again, Kathleen. I've really loved chatting to you, and I loved your wonderful book. So thank you.
It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you, and thank you, listeners, for listening. Goodbye.